to Full Send Engineering. This is episode 1. So you're probably wondering what full send actually means. What the hell is it, right? Full send is actually borrowed from a term that we use in action adventure sports. And it's for people that are going absolutely all out with full energy and full passion to achieve a goal. Basically, when people get shit done. Now, on that note, I've got a very special guest with me today, Jeremy. Jeremy has gone full send in every aspect of his life, whether it's going to university and studying a double degree, so you did engineering and commerce, or if it was moving to Shanghai for your vocational work. Later in life, you spotted the tech boom from an absolute mile away and you positioned yourself really strategically to make the most of that. But by far the story that stands out to me the most, Jeremy, is when it was my 21st birthday and you took it upon yourself to make a massive lamb on the spit for 100 of my mates and my family. And
I almost forgot that.
That goes down in history as one of the best meals. You were there basting it for 5 or 6 hours. And it absolutely was one of the best meals we've ever had. So welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Good to know. And I appreciate the definition of full send. I had no idea.
Really?
Yeah. So, I appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, guest number 1,
I'm pioneering with you.
Yeah. So, look, I must say I'm feeling a bit sniffly today. So I just wanted to apologise to all our listeners because there's probably 1 or 2 listeners, But if I do have a sniffle or if my voice is a bit croaky, we've got our 9-month-old Micah who's a bit crook at the moment. I seem to pick up after that. So I'm sure you're in a similar position.
Yeah, I'd say, I don't know how, but the female tends to not get sick and the male just cops it all.
Yeah, my missus isn't sick, but I tend to be sick all the time. I don't know if it's a case of man flu or what. But that actually brings me to what I wanted to ask you about first, Jeremy, and that was about if there was anything from your childhood that you think helped to shape you today, like one thing from your childhood that brought this person in front of us.
Yeah, I think when I look back, I had maybe 2 examples in my life, my mum, my dad, that probably shaped who I am. When I look back at it, there was moments in time where I saw Dad like working really, really hard to the point where he would come back of an evening and be like sitting in the garage with the car on, still talking to clients or his team, at 9 p.m. at night. And, Mum was doing what she was doing, Dad was doing what he was doing. And what I saw was they were working as a team. That was one thing. And then to touch on like that moment in time, I had reconnected with the school kids that I had grown up with at primary. And at primary, we were, I guess, level playing field. Everyone, I guess money didn't really appear with a circle of friends. It was more so who you mixed with, who you gelled with, and you created that circle of friends.
Yeah. And
we got to a point at university where we could see an opportunity in front of us where we would have possibly, higher paying roles.
Yeah.
Maybe an opportunity to build a life, a family and whatnot. And I reconnected with that primary circle of friends through soccer.
Oh, yeah.
And what I saw was some of them were maybe lost with where they were heading and not knowing what they wanted to do. And I had a clear line of sight of what I wanted to do through, I guess, the circle of friends that I developed and, the guidance that I had through my parents.
And what was that at the time?
So we were studying civil engineering, right? And so I had a breakdown moment. So full transparency. I had a breakdown moment where I found myself distraught after my first training session.
Oh, no way.
And I had my head in my hands and then chatting to Mum. And I was like, this is so unfair. Like the world is geared unfairly. I had all this opportunity presented to me and the circle of friends, maybe were going down either a different path or they maybe didn't have the same guidance maybe that I had. So I felt it was quite unfair. And, what came to me really quickly was Mum sort of snapped me out of it and said, yeah, but you might be the one that employs them one day. So that really shifted my focus in a different way where, I could create not only opportunities for myself, but opportunities for others around me. And, I think I've somewhat demonstrated that with people around me. It might not be the circle of friends that I grew up with, but the people around me that come for guidance and whatnot. And I've referred a few people into the company that I'm with. I've also supported some other people making transition over to tech.
Yeah.
So I found that moment to be really pivotal to what I do.
That's awesome. And you're talking about this moment. Do you think, did you always want to do Bachelor of Engineering, Bachelor of Commerce?
No. No.
How did you come across that?
So that's a good question. So when I was growing up through primary school, I thought my ceiling was being an electrician. Yeah, gotcha. I thought that's what I was going to become.
I wonder if we would have been better off just choosing trades.
You look at the electricians today, and I think it's a great profession, and the industry's come a long way from where it was. But I saw myself becoming an electrician. That was just me. University, I didn't have anyone in my immediate family. Mum made university, but I think halfway through it wasn't for her, and so she dropped out. But I didn't have anyone immediate to look up to aspire to university. It just wasn't in my vocabulary at the age of 12 or whatever it was. So, I went to a school that, probably shaped where I was heading later and instilled a belief in me. And I think that's also, part of my upbringing as well. They instilled a belief with me that, I could do something. Went to Open Day University, walked into architecture because I thought that's what I was going to do, and walked straight back out. Good at maths, good at physics, went to an open session of engineering and just picked it.
Yeah, sick. And then where does the commerce finance kind of flavour come from?
Yeah, so my old man he worked for a number of large financial institutions over the years. And so being, good with mathematics, I thought it didn't hurt to add a double degree. And one of our close friends, Jaden, he was doing the double degree. And so it was really easy for me to tack on commerce and major in finance afterwards. Didn't know where that was going to take me or help me. But it's funny now that I'm in a sales role that I've got, an engineering background where, I sell to the construction industry or the AEC industry. Yep. And then, and I've got a finance background.
That's good. And going back to those initial uni days, that's where I met you.
With a broken arm?
Yeah, I had a broken arm from skateboarding. I used to ride my skateboard around the campus all day, bombing that hill from the University of Wollongong from the top car park.
That's it. I used to use you as target practice with my soccer ball.
But can you maybe, because I remember one of my distinct memories from uni was this friction where I kind of wanted to sit down and do things my own way and sit down and work it out by myself. And then I met you guys and that all changed. And I think you're a bit of an instigator of the way that we did work. Maybe you can explain how we did group work back in the day?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, we had a number of minds, and a number of minds make light work, right? So we used to get together in a library, we'd solve particular problems that were given to us, and we would support each other. I think, that support network doesn't really exist in the university culture. Whereas through schooling, you're sort of guided and supported to, complete your work and work towards a particular goal. Yeah. In university, you're sort of a lone wolf and you got to make it yourself. Yeah. So, having that support network amongst us and completing the tasks and, helping teach each other. Yeah. There were some people that were really good in mathematics, or some people might be really good at chemistry. We were leaning on each other. And I think, it was that we had to do the work by ourselves, but, we could support each other and make sure we remained focused on the task at hand.
Yeah. I think that was a pivotal moment for me, really relying on the crew to get us through those, those big assignments, and we would all split it off into parts and kind of work on one part each. And then I remember there was some times when we were doing all-nighters at Loftus TAFE, because UOW had that campus there. You remember that? That was amazing. Yeah. And I remember distinctly we would split the assignment, all work on parts of it for 5 hours. And then 2 hours before we had the test, we would all teach each other frantically what we learned over the last 5 hours.
That's right.
And I can safely say, without that guidance from the crew, I wouldn't have got through university 4 years. Definitely not.
And I probably wouldn't encourage it to anyone to leave it to the last minute. Yeah. And it's not an ad for no-dose, but we did use a bit of no-dose here and there. But 100%. We would learn certain sections. And then towards the end of it, just before the test, we were teaching each other what we had learned because, the body of work was huge and what they could assess us on was massive.
Yeah. So now coming to the end of your degree, I remember really randomly getting a phone call from you and you were saying, Chelly, I'm going to China. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about, mate? Can you tell us a little bit about like your thought process on why you wanted to move to China to do your first, it was your vocational work?
Yeah,
right?
my vocational work. So we had to complete 12 weeks of work experience, to complete our degree. At the time, it was post GFC. So, we had a labour shortage here in Australia and we were bringing over people to complete or fill roles. Typically, through the United Kingdom and Ireland and whatnot were coming over. A lot of the roles were being taken up and, to go out and get vocational work was really difficult. One of the contractors that I reached out to turned around and said, yeah, we can give you 6 weeks, but it's going to be unpaid. And that was rough. That was rough back in the day.
Illegal, eh?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not me. It's not me to question it. I guess I looked at it, and at the time I was at Civic Video. That's a blast from the past. Renting movies, and so I was like, oh, well, I can't give up what I'm doing at the moment and earning cash to go ahead and work for nothing. I need my degree. That's for sure, but I can't just work for nothing because at the end of the day, I've got my car, I've got my phone bill, I've got little things that I'm saving for.
Yep.
I wanted to progress forward. I couldn't take those steps back, nor did I have the cash saved up.
Yeah.
So at that point, where could I look? I had to look overseas. Didn't really have anyone that'd been to China. I had a really close mate at school that was Chinese background, and that came over at I think it was like year 8 and whatnot. He gave me like no bullshit here. He gave me a schoolyard presentation of what China was and what to expect, to the point where he was showing me what my kitchen would look like. And there was an image of a typical Chinese home kitchen, which had like a little gas bottle set up to like a little stove, and that I would cook. Anyway, so I started searching online. I found an organization, Chinese / German owners. I believe there's some rules around, foreigners owning businesses, so they had to pair up with, local residents. So look there, they were going to pay me. It was a 6-month vocational work, and so I decided to pack my bags and go. It was really strange, finding a job overseas.
Yeah.
And the first person I went to was my old man, and I said, "Hey, Dad, I got a job," and he's like, "Okay, that's good." I go, "Yeah, there's a problem, but it's in China." And he said, "Why is that a problem?" So that really blew me away. My dad's response at that time, yeah, because he backed me and he knew what I had to get done to complete my degree. And at the age of 20, not knowing China, only hearing stories about China, he backed me and I went and started my vocational work.
So I could imagine that first kind of 24 hours when you're hopping off the plane was absolutely would have blown your mind.
Wild.
Can you kind of explain to us what that first initial 24 hours was like? Did you have like a moment where you were like, man, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. I distinctly remember it, growing up in like a bit of a sheltered environment, Greek background, ethnic environment. You also hear the stories about China, and you don't really know it until you start to grow up and where their position is in the economy, and you start to mature about the whole world. Plus, I didn't travel by myself ever, so that was the first time I was going overseas by myself. I'm landing into a quote unquote communist country, and all I can see when I'm about to land on the airstrip were street lights across the whole of the shoreline, just like going the whole way the shoreline, and all I could see were those street lights. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to a prison.
It's a jail.
It was wild. That's how it felt. When I was landing,
You're
that's
landing
exactly
at night,
how I felt. Landing at night,
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my God, I'm landing in a prison, and then I think I was landing at like 4 or 5 a.m. So it was still dark.
Yeah.
I walk out of the terminal to someone that was, from the business that was guiding me back. It was the driver, the local driver, forget his name. And he had my name on there. It was like, my last name's 14 letters long.
Yeah,
so he had
wrong.
spelt wrong. It was, but he was also late. And so I was like, walked out. I'm like, where is this guy? Anyway, he finds me and we find each other, and he's taken me on this longest walk because I think he's parked in a section which was for free. Yeah. So he's taken me this longest walk to get to his car. And he gets his car. He's got limited English. I'm just trusting this bloke. I've just met him. And he's then just fanging it down the highway. He had to be doing like 140 clicks on the highway. Oh, and it was like, I think 100 zone.
You're like sitting in the back, like holding.
Yeah. Well, I was actually sitting in the passenger seat. And then the first thing he did as we got onto the highway is he wound down his window and he flicked me a packet of cigarettes. He goes, "You want a ciggy?" And I was like, "No, I'm good, mate." And he just lights up. And so as you're driving, we're going from Pudong Airport into Shanghai, and that stretch of road is quite long. I think it was about an hour drive. I think when you did it on the fast train, it was different, but the drive was really, really long. And all you could see, every 10 minutes was industrial zone, industrial zone, industrial zone. And then as you got close to China, you started to see the overpasses and underpasses of the roads. And the amount of work was amazing. It was mind-blowing. You heard the reports, what China was doing, but, we're seeing it live was just another thing.
So can you kind of describe in those initial days when you landed, what kind of work were you doing?
So I was supporting, I was undergraduate. I was just supporting the team around, tendering processes. What they were building were factories up in the north of China, Dalian and elsewhere, and they were partnering with German organizations who wanted to establish themselves in China, the likes of VW, BMW, and so they were building factories for them. And those factories, might have related to like an automotive transmission, an engine, whatever it may have been. And I probably need to fact check this, but at the time, what we were told was for every 3 vehicles that are sold overseas from China, 5 needed to be sold in China. So if BMW wanted to establish themselves in China, those 3 cars that were sold overseas, 5 had to be sold in China. So the type of work we're doing, we're tendering, facilities. They were pretty simple structures, nothing too crash hot, but the concrete bed, your walls, your roof structure, your grid formation, to support the machinery that needed to go into that environment.
Cool. And there must have been a bit of a cultural shock and a language barrier between you and some of your colleagues.
Yeah, I think, as a Westerner, and they use the term Laoway, I think, from memory. As a Westerner, you have a very different, I guess, characteristics to, or cultural differences to, the Asian culture, where we're a bit more forward, we're a bit more upfront. We ask questions and whatnot. But being an undergraduate, you're looking for guidance as well. So it was a really weird mix where, I had my seniorities who would guide me and tell me what to do. But then, I would then have to go and ask them questions about, well, surely it's been done elsewhere. What have we done in the past? Is there something that I can model or work off? Spreadsheets that might help me calculate, or am I building everything from scratch? And so we would build these tender documents, which were like 180 pages long, about how we were going to go win a particular project. And yeah, we had it was strange because the cultural and the language barrier was one, but one of the gentlemen in there, I forget his name, Jack, and one of the other guys were quite good with English. But it was more the cultural differences that were challenging, I'd say.
Yeah. And then I remember there was a couple of stories where you got dragged up to meetings with the CEO of such and such massive company, kind of being the token English speaker, and it must have been pretty fun as a young undergrad.
Oh, no way. It was daunting.
Crazy
It was
meetings.
daunting. It was real daunting because you don't really know what's happening in those meetings as well, because those meetings were being held in 3 languages. It was English, German, and Chinese. And so you're going to this meeting, some of the big wigs of like VW or BMW, and you know that you're there because you're the token white person, right? And you can speak English, but half the documents were in 2 languages, and so you couldn't decipher what they were talking about at what time. And then the meetings were going back and forth, and a lot of it was handled by our managing director. But there were certain calculations that you might do in the tender, and he might look at you in that meeting and be like, is this accurate? And you're just like, well, I think so.
Yeah.
We should have picked up on it earlier if it wasn't.
Numbers twice.
That's right. So, it was quite daunting, although exciting, being in those rooms, the big board rooms. At the age of 20, it's very different, to now, let's say.
And I remember this idea that you came back, when you came back from China, you were saying it really just felt like the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Can you kind of describe that to people that haven't been to China before?
Yeah, look, I can only touch on the experience at the time in 2010, and you got to rewind your mind back, right? 2010, it was only when the iPhone was released. Wow, yeah. So there wasn't smartphones prevalent anyway in the market, definitely not in Asia, and I think it was 2G to 3G at that time, right? We're at almost 5, we're at 5, almost going to 6, right? So it's a very different world at that time, pre-COVID too. So I think that plays a big part. Yeah. The perception in China was very different to post-COVID. But I think the world underestimated how China, I think, was the center of the universe at that time, and probably still is, to be fair. We do, I think, underestimate the Chinese economy and some of the smarts that are coming out of that economy. You're probably going to touch on this a little bit later, but like, your AI, your manufacturing.
Yeah.
I believe we underestimate, the capabilities that China has. And at that time, we thought, there was a lot of construction happening. The World Expo was happening at that time as well. So they were showcasing Shanghai. I remember, there was days and days of smog. And all of a sudden, right, the Chinese Expo happens, at the Shanghai Chinese Expo, World Expo. And all of a sudden, for those 6 days that they were showcasing to the world, there was no smog in the sky, no clouds in the sky, and it was perfect weather. Yeah, so those weather machines they talk about, I don't know, it could be true.
So you came back from China and then you finished your degree, and then what were you kind of thinking at that point in your career? Where were you kind of wanting to head?
Yeah, so coming back from China, I had to finish off my double degree, so I still had my finance subjects to go. We had, I think it was like 4 subjects or something left. And so I decided to go and do exchange in the US. Oh, so we're going to two superpowers within 2 years to work out, which way I want to go. And at that time, coming back from the US, the finance degrees I really, really liked. And so when I returned, I was like, is engineering the path that I want to take? But I think I'd been out of touch for a bit of time. And that's why, I guess the doubt was sort of setting in. And so, looking for roles, it wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
But, I thought I had to give engineering a go, or some form of engineering a go, because I'd spent 4 years on it, to suddenly shift my mindset, move into a different world, would probably be, not appropriate at the time. And, looking back on it, I think it was the right decision, because there was a lot of things that I learned along the way. And so I applied for undergraduate roles. I came close to one, and it was a competitor to the organisation that I joined, which was Wholesome at the time. And Wholesome provided, a bit of a rounded experience. Worked in Precast for a bit of time, worked in concrete for a bit of time. So joined at that point. But there wasn't a role in Sydney. I had to move to Newcastle. So I'm a bit of a nomad, at the beginning.
So you basically moved from Shanghai, one of the biggest cities, into Newcastle and working for a concrete precast company.
That's it.
At the time, I think you were working in operations.
Yeah. Right? So as a grad, they put me on the op side of the business. The factory was making pipes, precast pipes, ranging from 1.8 meters to like 300 millimeter concrete pipes, from memory anyway. And so then maximizing the efficiency of the shed and also ensuring that, we were on time delivery to all our products so we weren't stockpiling, a lot of pipes in our yard. And very different to, what you studied at university and whatnot. We were making some concrete products that didn't even have drawings at the time, which was really bizarre to me. They were drawing somewhere, but how were they conducting their QA checks at the time without sort of drawings on the site anyway? And so I made it my mission to, bring the standard of the shed up to what I thought was appropriate. And so I went out and engaged draftees to make sure that we had products that we all had drawings at the time. So I was in operations at the time, making sure there was efficiencies in the job site, but also supporting QA process.
And tell us about the feeling when you started getting an idea that you might want to push into sales and technical sales. So I think that happened at that time, didn't it?
Well, it happened a little bit later. So I had my experience up there. The operations manager had left at the time because it was just too much. And so they put me in as acting operations manager. So I'm going from a grad role, and then managing a 60-year-old bloke who had been running the shed, and I'm trying to tell him how to run his shed, which was wild at the time. And there was about 60 people on site, to a point where it was just too much. It was overwhelming to a point where we had, I think it was 4 safety risks on site that were deemed like high risk that we had to address. And we had to work out a way to fund that. And we put ourselves on a path to do that. But, I'd go to bed at night and be like, I don't want anyone on my site to die. And I don't want that over my head at the age of like 23.
That's a lot for a grad.
Yeah, where I've got a whole working career in front of me. So, at that point, I requested a shift. And so I got shifted back down to Sydney in concrete. And so I was more on the upside of concrete. I was managing 3 plants at the time. I think it was Liverpool, Hurstville, and Alexandria at the time. But I got a lot of face-to-face with clients, which was really cool. I really enjoyed that. And so that at that point, I was positioning myself to say, well, I really enjoy the face-to-face. I wouldn't mind a sales role. Put me in front of the client. I'd love to manage, a book of business. There was an opportunity at the time there. And so that's when I transitioned to Austral Precast, where I was selling precast panels for high-rise buildings.
Yeah, cool. So you've moved into more of a sales role. How did you find that transition from more of I wouldn't say traditional, but moving from like a traditional construction kind of company into something where you're using your technical skills potentially, and moving into more of a sales role where you're kind of more interfacing with clients?
So, you're right. It's not like a traditional construction role. It was more like a materials engineering role type of thing. But when I made the transition, coming from a technical background in a sales position for products that, construction use, helped me have credibility in the room. Not that they knew my history, but I could talk what they were talking, which helped. And so value engineering, coaching the contractors to understand that if they can upgrade their crane and pay more money up front, then the long-term impact would be supporting their building come at a lower cost or a quicker, construction to build the frame up.
This is so they can put bigger panels in.
Put bigger panels in, the layout and how the panels were laid out. Some of them weren't even designed with panels. So, giving them that optioneering to go down the panel work, they had no idea. And so, where it was spec'd in, it could have been spec'd in by, could be an architect or an engineer that didn't quite understand, how the quote unquote sausage factory was pumping out panels. But if we optimized how we were pumping out panels and we could get them delivered on site, they could stand up those panels and they could have, slab to slab turnaround times, a lot quicker than what they anticipated.
So I think it was about that time when you had this idea, or tell us about your journey into thinking that maybe you wanted to try to move into tech and software. So it was about that time too, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I was using Bluebeam at the time.
Bluebeam's good, eh?
can't say that. I'm sorry. I was using Bluebeam at a time, and I really enjoyed using the product. In actual fact,
I can say it. It's good.
Yeah. In actual fact, I actually started looking at how I can join the organization. That's how much I really enjoyed using their product. But that supported me, estimating projects and doing the panel work so that I could articulate how we could change their project, to I guess speed it up or reduce cost. To the point where I was like, wow, why is it that getting a Bluebeam license is so special or considered special? Must cost a lot, or it must be something that's really new to the industry. Why aren't others using it? Why aren't others well versed with the technology?
So you weren't seeing some of the contractors you were working with using Bluebeam?
Yeah, some of them were using it. Don't get me wrong, but in the office, there was one master Bluebeam user, and he was really, 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 really quick. But there was others that weren't so versed in using the technology and realizing the benefits out of the technology. Obviously, you got your drafters who are drafting, and they can use Bluebeam with their eyes closed. But the efficiency that you were getting out of using technology was huge. And so, I was in a sales role. I really liked the tech that I was using, and my sister at the time was at another tech firm, and I thought, well, why wouldn't I make the transition to sell technology into the industry that, probably is not adopting technology as much as what they should be? Yeah. And so that's where the spark came from, where I started to look, where could I be selling, what could I be selling to the industry? Bluebeam was one of them, but I didn't go.
So what was the kind of first role that you had when you moved across into the tech scene?
Yeah, so started to do a bit of my research, and really understood that Aconex was really prevalent in the market, and at that time, I don't think Aconex was hiring, but I was looking for similar applications that were like Aconex. I don't think Aconex had sold at the time either, so it was very new. People didn't really maybe understand the value, and I guess in our age group anyway. But started to look online as to what tech gets sold into the industry. Came across two pieces of software, RIB software, and then PlanGrid. And I went to apply to both. Ended up getting both opportunities, but PlanGrid came to me probably a month late, and at that time, PlanGrid was fully remote. And so we're talking, I think it was 2017, 2018, fully remote at the age of 25, 26. And I was like, I don't think I got the maturity to work fully remote at the time. And so I'd already taken the RIB job, integrity, and I stick to my word. I couldn't leave the organization that I just signed up to. When PlanGrid came to me, and what sat in the back of my head was being able to have the maturity to sit behind a desk at home to do work, or visit people on a 5-day basis. I didn't think I had the maturity at the time, and so I'd gone to RIB again, Chinese/German background, which is bizarre, right? And their coding, I guess, office was based in Shenzhen. So that's where I went and did my onboarding.
Wow.
There was another gentleman in my Sydney office, a gentleman in the US office, and there was one from Europe as well at the time. And started my onboarding and joined RIB, which is like a project management sort of solution. And I was selling I2CX at the time.
Cool. So kind of tell us about the differences between working for a more traditional company to moving into what is the software industry and kind of more of a startup-y kind of feel for a business? Or
yeah, so I would say RIB wasn't that organization, and there was some cultural things out of Europe and Asia that prevent, I guess, the startup feel, I would say. So I spent a bit more time at RIB. I was there for about a year or so, where the opportunity at PlanGrid cropped up again. And
Yeah.
so at that point, I took that opportunity, and that was the startup feel. And so, from your traditional brick and mortar organization like a Wholesome to a nimble startup feel where, I was walking around with just a Mac laptop and an iPad, and I could do all my work through that, was a really strange feeling because I didn't also have examples around me like that. And, there was a lot of funding to support the sales motion in delivering technology to the people that needed it. And so a lot of the, target audience for PlanGrid were the people that were actually delivering the work on the job site. And so I know moving from that old world of the brick and mortar where, through my concrete experience, we were walking on job sites and, talking to the people that we're selling to, I was turning up with an iPad and saying, "Hey, have you seen this piece of kit?" And, one of the, I guess not sales tactics, but one of the comments that I would usually leave, the project manager with is, see all your boys and girls here out on site in the job site. If they can put a bet on sports bet, they can use PlanGrid. And the minute I said that, they were like, "Oh God, maybe we need to give this a crack."
Yeah. PlanGrid at the time was taking designs and drawings and changing them into an image so that you could pull them up really fast on your phone or on your computer.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember the time when you came into my office at the time I was with Northrop and you kind of showed us what the capabilities were. And at the time we were managing a team of construction engineers that were running out on site and doing inspections and stuff. That really changed the way we did things. Suddenly we've got the engineers in the office working on designs while they are, or working on an RFI drawing or something where by the time the inspector gets to site, they've got a solution and they just open their device and pull the drawing up and run through it with the project manager.
Yeah, that's right.
That type of software really changed the way we did things. What other benefits did you see in that time, or were there any other early adopters for tech which were coming out of those days when you were at PlanGrid?
Yeah, so the example that you give is spot on. What we were trying to do is foster, greater collaboration on the project team. So, people that you didn't think could touch technology to contribute to, the drawings or, the RFIs or whatever it may be, were suddenly contributing. It's really easy to grab your phone now and, a grandfather taking a photo of his grandchildren, and that's all you were doing. When you were defecting out on site, that's all you were doing. You were saying, okay, put a pin on a drawing, take a photo, and then you capture that. You can always fill out, what the details were later. Or, a photo has 1,000 words, it tells a massive story. So, as long as you capture the photo and it's time and date stamped and who did it, you can obviously revisit that. And so what we were fostering was greater collaboration on a project site. And also we were putting pressure, or we were, changing the thought process of senior leadership around a piece of kit like an iPad that suddenly went from, too expensive to ever have on a job site to somewhat like made sense to have on a job site, because a $600, $700 iPad could probably solve a $10,000 rework. So all of a sudden the ROI was there, and, changing their mindset and also having people out on site using the technology that they were never able to get on board, all of a sudden was a no-brainer. Yeah. And so those two points, really shifted how organizations were looking at technology for us.
So back when you were at PlanGrid, I know that after PlanGrid you moved into Autodesk, and at the same time PlanGrid got bought by Autodesk.
Yeah.
Did you move into Autodesk via that sale, or did you go with them before?
So PlanGrid was acquired in 2019. I think it was like 875 million or something like that. Wow. The whole organization got brought into Autodesk at that time. And so that was one of the largest, acquisitions in the construction tech space at the time. And so the whole team came because, one thing that I would say, pre-acquisition is that there was probably a mindset within PlanGrid that didn't exist in Autodesk. And what I would say is that, construction is extremely high touch, particularly at the project level. And for those users to actually move to a piece of technology, they need a face-to-face interaction. And so PlanGrid was really good at that. But, there wasn't a model within the Autodesk world that allowed for that, because we at Autodesk were dealing with, engineers and architects that used our technology for many, many years. And so they were really proficient on the tech. Plus, they were taught at uni how to use it.
Yeah.
So, so we had a different, a different mindset to get to the projects to uplift their capability. And so, and so I came across with a PlanGrid acquisition to Autodesk.
So you quickly, it seems like in those early days when you're at Autodesk, you really started to shine as a what do you call it, an account executive at the time?
Yeah.
And you had started to really prove your value. I know that after a little while, you had been crowned one of the top account executives in the whole of the company, in the whole of Autodesk.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? And was that also the particular trip to Vegas where you received your award? That must have been amazing.
Yeah. So, so at the time, it wasn't the whole of Autodesk. It was the Autodesk Construction Solutions team.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of groundwork that I put in, with some of our clients that we'd worked with. And again, we were delivering a lot of value to the clients, and bringing capability up on the job site was really difficult to do. But, a lot of the work that I put in, I did end up becoming, I think, number one rep of the year at that time. Solidified number one spot in the third quarter of the year as well, which was also frustrating for some of my peers. But yeah, I guess at that time, we have a what they call like a diamond club or president's club, some organizations have, where they reward their top salespeople. And I had won an award at the time there. Unfortunately, COVID set in, and so I didn't end up going on that trip.
Oh, no way.
But the company made good of the scenario, of the situation, and the organization takes care of their people. So I think whilst I lost, possibly the connections that I would have made with senior leadership at that time, I think it just put me on a path of my next role within the organization, which is the one I spoke about before, dealing with the top organizations in our part of the world.
So where is tech and what are you guys doing as a business to kind of get a grasp of tech and the AI space at the moment? Because for everyone that's in, construction and engineering, it almost feels a little bit like, what am I doing to keep up with this? Because if I don't keep up with this, maybe I'm going to fall behind and maybe I'm going to get left.
Yeah.
So there's this certain, to be honest, I'm a bit scared. I'm trying to think of, what courses do I have to do? How can I keep up with everything? What are you guys doing to take advantage of AI and push tech into some of these bigger construction companies?
Yeah, I think it is probably scary and unknown, and I don't know if I have a silver bullet answer to that. But one of the things that Autodesk preach is, AI is not there to replace people. I think what AI is there to do is to expand, the productivity of the people that are doing the work.
Completely.
And so there will be low-level tasks that will be replaced by AI. But the pace that we work at, and the output will be greater with the amount of people that we have. And so I can't say that we won't be replaced. There could be a possibility. I don't know. Don't have a glass ball, but the intention is to increase productivity and increase output. And I think the rates came out yesterday or something, and there were hold on rates. And one of the comments was, we have low productivity in our economy. So we're trying to address that. Labor shortage, low productivity is the idea of technology is to address those challenges. And so, what is Autodesk doing as an organization? ChatGPT became like a household name all of a sudden, and AI was the buzzword.
Yeah.
Autodesk had been doing a lot of work in that space for quite some time, and they lead, from an academic perspective, they lead AI research in a CAD geometry environment. I think they've published like 90 papers since, or 90 odd papers since 2009. So it started back then, generative design. It could be that you're building a part for a motorcycle, and instead of building it the traditional way, you might be putting it under an analysis to work out, what's the least amount of material to achieve the same, I guess, function that arm that's holding. It could be the back wheel that's holding the back wheel on a motorcycle. It could be, these chairs. These chairs, are they the most functional for the way they manufactured, or could they be lighter weight, lighter material? To have the same function. So generative design has been around with Autodesk for quite some time now. I think the buzzword has just exploded, and now a lot of questions are being asked around AI. There's a lot of risks that come with AI too. People are concerned with is their data training their model so that the whole other industry can leverage. There's some challenges around that, IP and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the space of AI and I guess where Autodesk sees themselves is that we want to support the people doing the work with removing the mundane, low-level activity in their job.
So, where do you kind of see construction projects going over the next 10 years? Do you see like a shift in the way designs are done, and do you see a shift in the way that buildings are handed over with ideas of digital twins, and I know that there's a lot of work going into how a building actually operates or how products operate. Can you tell us a little bit about your insight into where do you think the industry is going?
Yeah, I think the response to that question changes every year, and it's evolved significantly since AI has become like a household name. But as long as we fill the pipeline and there's big projects, I think we'll head in a healthy direction. I guess the immediate concern at the moment is the big projects are drying up in our region anyway.
Yeah.
But leveraging technology, I think it will become, I think as the older generation start to retire as well, and there's more of the new generation bleeding in, I think technology will become a bigger portion of our deliverables. That's one. And I think we'll leverage it a lot more, in our day-to-day workspace. We have some grads that have joined our organization, and the way they just do their work and how they organize themselves, they come from a generation where they had computers at high school. So even, you can see a distinct difference between the people that are joining the organization and using OneNote. Like, I still don't use OneNote. I still don't use a notepad and pen.
Isn't it?
So, becoming better at just being efficient at what you do, is worlds apart already.
Yeah.
So,
and then you flick through, you're in a meeting, and then you're like, oh, what did we agree on, 15 weeks ago in that meeting on a Tuesday? And then like your grads got it up on the screen. They're like, oh, actually, this is what we talked about. You're like, oh gosh, I wish I was using OneNote a bit better.
Yeah, exactly right. Like, so just those little things you can see that are bleeding into your day-to-day work. And, it's great. Like, it's great to see that, because all of a sudden we're keeping ourselves accountable to what we're meant to be doing, and, the project remains on track.
Yeah.
But, in terms of the industry, do I see us leveraging and using models more and whatnot? Yeah, 100% I do. And
do you think we can finally say goodbye to the drawing flat set?
I think it'll remain. I think it'll remain for a number of years, but maybe that's me being an old school. I think there'll be reasons as to why a 2D drawing is important, but we will have smarter, I guess, workflows within the IT space, which will make pressing one or two buttons really easy for us as people on site.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this workflow does everything that we need.
Spits out a 2D drawing.
That's right. So whether it's in design or whether it's in delivery, and probably more so in delivery, because that's where, the efficiencies can really change the game for us, to a point where, I've had conversations with some of engineering service providers where they're trying to understand that, the cost of what they do shouldn't be then place a margin on top of that for what they I guess charge or bill out. What's the value add that they're bringing to their clients that in a competitive way that, they can possibly charge more, or, support the cost of technology within their workflows so that they can deliver quicker. And so we are, I would say, construction's difficult, very, very difficult. But, the other industries that adopted technology 20, 30 years ago, that was difficult then as well. And there's some other industries that's perceived to be really far advanced, but they're built on archaic systems as well. So, there's still more to see.
And I remember some time back, I think it was at the time when we were looking to buy a unit at the time, me and my partner. And at the time, there were all these building defects in apartments around Sydney. And I remember having this conversation with you, which was around like, why hasn't the owners of these units got access to the details and the designs and like this fully integrated model where they can see, oh, there's a defect here, or there's issues with the waterproofing on a building. Do you kind of see the whole construction and engineering world getting handed over via a model or via a BIM, or I don't know what the term is, but actually getting handed over to the people that own the buildings and the people that maintain the buildings? Do you see that in our future?
Yeah, I think like a living, breathing digital twin of the actual structure itself. Yeah, I do see that. When, I don't know. Yeah. But, your ops manager for that building might be walking around with a tablet and sees there is a defect, and all he does is click a button on the actual model and says, order now and engage contractor, or find 3 quotes, whatever it may be. But I do see that being, where the world goes.
Yeah.
Because, why wouldn't it? Like, I don't understand why it won't go there. It's probably the pressures and the I guess the way we've been doing things that prevents it from getting there.
Yeah.
At the moment, but down the line, eventually it'll get there, because the generations after us will turn around and say, well, why are we doing it the old way for?
Yeah. I think it's going to drive this ultimate accountability of people
100%.
That, people that are building projects, people that are designing projects, people that are, maintaining projects.
Yep.
Everyone will have to be fully accountable.
Yeah, and I think the commissioner, or the New South Wales Building Commissioner, is driving the right process. Tying that to a rating is quite interesting.
Yeah. That ICERT rating. Yeah. So then, just rounding out our chat with AI and tech, have you got your eyes on any particular startups or tech that you think's going to come into our worlds soon?
Not necessarily, anything that, might be common knowledge. Our platform at Autodesk is evolving day by day. A lot of, we got on the order of 40 to 60 features coming out every quarter. Wow. There's a lot of investment in that platform. We preach a story about convergence between your media and entertainment industry, your architecture, engineering and architecture industry, construction, and then also your manufacturing. There's a lot of similarities between, what we can see there. Your media, us as an organization, from a media and entertainment perspective, is great for a client that might be looking at investing into like building an asset. If we can arm your engineers or your builders with technology that helps visualize for your client what you're going to be building and how people are going to interact with it. I think I saw on the news when Sydney Football Stadium was built, you could see the people that were walking through and where there would be congestion and bottlenecks. Yeah. A client won't understand that from a 2D drawing. But if you can leverage the technology that sits in the movie and entertainment industry in your engineering space, it's a pretty cool world.
So you're thinking full VR headsets.
Yeah.
Cruising around in an alternate reality.
That's it.
But maybe linking it with that modeling and like finite element analysis.
Yeah, 100%.
Where you're seeing flows of people running through.
Yes, that's right.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. So, being able, and I say this as politely as I can, but being able to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator, to articulate something that is in someone's world, let's say in an engineering space, that seems so easy to understand, but to possibly, it could be someone that's only in finance or is a clerk or, only did actuarial studies, whatever it may be, someone that doesn't understand the engineering world and vice versa, but being able to be on the same playing field in a room to be able to articulate, what this space may provide. At the end of the day, we're not just building a stadium. We're building something that's going to be a living, breathing asset for the community. That might be for a sporting event, but that might be for, the Easter show or what have you, where people are living and breathing this asset that is providing back to our community.
For like 100 years.
Yeah,
you got to
100%.
cater for that.
That's right.
With like population growth.
That's right. That's right.
The way that things are changing.
Yeah.
And the way we
and then
do
at
things.
60 years or something, they refurb it to extend the life for another 100.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, completely. So do you have any insights for any, young engineers that are looking to make the jump into tech? Do you have any advice maybe, for what people are, what companies like, or what people like you look for in young guns?
Yeah. The path that I took was move into construction, then from construction do construction sales, then from construction sales move into tech sales for construction. That was the easiest path for me. And it's really hard to crack into software without software experience, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And I'm an example of a few other people that, I work with are examples of that as well. Maybe if I reflect back on it, it was hard. It was hard at the time to think about possibly taking a pay haircut, to move to a different industry. And plus it's a risk.
Yeah.
But, I would say you've got to back yourself. You've got to have a line of sight of what you want to do. And that comes with sometimes with maturity, particularly in guys. When you finish a school at 18, you don't know what you want to do. You got no idea.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So I think, if you're moving into that world, you have to do a bit of research, understand that, try and leverage your contacts that are in that industry and how you would enter that world. And I think entering, in any capacity will broaden, your opportunity thereafter. So don't limit yourself to say, oh, well, I can't join because I don't have sales experience. You could move into a business consulting role where you're consulting, to the industry because of your expertise that's been in the market. So, don't limit to yourself to where you join, because then from there onwards, you have opportunities within the software world
to change. And
that's right.
And to develop.
Yeah, 100%.
And last question for you, mate. Have you got any other fun stories where you kind of went full send and completely backed yourself?
I think it was the moment where I took on the opportunity at PlanGrid. For me, at that point, I think it was 25, 26, I was definitely not mature enough to be sitting behind a desk at home and doing work.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, COVID hits and sends everyone, to
Working
work from home.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it became a norm. And then I'm like, well, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. So, I think that point I was able to double down and understand what I was doing and where I was heading. For me, the path, when I set the goal to move into the tech space, it was never construction tech. It was always just tech. And so where I'm heading, I don't know, but I'm not limiting myself to the industry that we're working in, but I do enjoy working in this industry. It's a lot of fun. The people are completely real. We're solving real problems. So the moment I moved at PlanGrid and I was meeting people on the job site and really helping them, with what they were doing in their workflows on a day-to-day to get them home earlier or safe or whatever it may be, for me, that was really rewarding. And so for me, joining PlanGrid was my full send moment.
Yeah, cool. That's an amazing moment, Jeremy. I want to say thank you. Got your very own full send engineering shirt.
Just better fit, mate.
All right, it's 2XL, mate. It's 2XL. We're all good.
No, I appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story. I know it can be a bit daunting. And I just wanted to also thank the 1 or 2 viewers that we might have. If you like these kind of chats and you want to hear more of people, taking life as hard as they can and going full send, then please like, comment, or subscribe. And thanks for listening into episode number 1. Cool.
And if you pop off and you go big time, you're gonna have to re-interview me.
Yeah.
Because those one or two viewers might want to hear where my story went up.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jeremy.
All good, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.